Hello, and welcome to Contacts and Files with the Soluno software. In this recorded class, we will take a look at the different ways to interact with contacts and files, from adding them and to reviewing them in the future and editing them as necessary. So with that, let's go ahead and open up a copy of Soluno. So to get to Contacts and Files, you'll use the main navigation toolbar here in the top left. And we're going to spend this class under this icon here, Contacts and Files, little folder icon. Click it to access Contacts and Files. Now please bear in mind, I am logged in as an admin, so I have full access to the software. So I see all the tabs, etc. Based on your own security settings, you may not have access to everything that I do when you're using Soluno. So if you run across something you see in today's class that you don't have access to, please talk to your admins and they can get you access if it is needed. So for today's class, we're going to start with the conflict search. So you should see a tab called conflict search. This, of course, is where you're going to begin when a client decides to hire you. You want to make sure there is no conflict of interest. So we'll click on our conflict search tab. And a conflict search is like running a report in Soluno. So to run the conflict search, you'll see it tells you to click the down arrow to begin. So we're going to click this little icon here, the down arrow. And to run a report in Soluno, whether it's a conflict search or any other type of report, first you select the view. So in this view box, I'm going to click. And you've got two different views for your conflict search. We have our regular view, and we also have one that's formatted to export to Excel. Now you can export our regular conflict to Excel, but it's not going to look as nice as the one specifically formatted for the Excel features. So all of our reports can be exported out of the system either as PDF, Excel, or CSV. So for those of you who might have a document management system and you want to run your conflict search and then save a copy of it to your document management system to prove that it was done, you will be able to export a copy out if you would like. So I'm going to run our normal conflict report. After you choose the view, the next step is to set the parameters. In this case, the names you're looking for. So in this particular example, I'm looking for the name Joshua Brown. There we go. Let's spell it correctly. Now, by typing it in like this, it'll look for Joshua Brown, but it'll look for variations of it as well, like Brown, Joshua. So it's going to look for those two terms in proximity to each other. And that'll give me the most hits in case someone entered it in, Brown, Joshua, for example. Now, there may be times when you're looking for a specific term and you don't want those variations. Well, if that's the case, then you don't want to use Joshua space Brown. You want to type in the name, but you want to replace the space with a tilde sign. So as an example, if I want to search for another term, you always separate the terms with a semicolon. So type in a semicolon, and I'm going to look for one of the people I already have in my database. His name is Robert Snow. But I want to look for variations of Robert Snow. I'm looking for the term Robert Snow. So to find that exact term, I would type in Robert, instead of a space bar, tilde sign, and then Snow. That'll look for that exact phrase in the database and no variations of it. So when you put a space in, we'll look for variations of Joshua Brown. If you replace the space with the tilde sign, we'll look for the exact term. And you can add multiple search terms. Again, just remember to separate each one of them with a semicolon. Now to do a true conflict search, we're going to search all contacts and files, which is turned on by default, and also entries in the system, also turned on by default. Down below, I'm just going to send this to my screen. If you click in here, you could also just automatically send it to PDF, to Excel, or to a CSV file. But again, after I run it to the screen, I will still have the options to export a copy of this out if I want to save it. Now, to run the report, I just click the play button and I perform my conflict search. While it's running, you'll see report is currently running, and if for some reason you need to stop the report, you can click on the stop icon. Otherwise, just let this run, and when it's generated the results, we will see them pop up here on my screen. And here they are. So for my first result, Joshua Brown, it found no potential conflicts. So I have not used that name anywhere in my system before. For Robert Snow, it did find some conflicts, which I expected because I use him quite a bit. When you get a hit, it will tell you where it found the hit, in this case, a trust transaction. In the bottom, it'll tell you where it found the hit, in this instance, in the to from field, and it found the name Robert Snow. Up here at the top, it's telling me it found it in the contact Frost Industries, contact number 6. In here, it's related to file 6-001. There's the responsible attorney, and then here's details about the contact in the file. Now, if you're not sure this is a true conflict of interest and you would like to see the actual transaction, over to the right is our drill down icon. You will find this on all of our reports. It'll allow you to drill down to that particular transaction to see what it is. In this case, I click the drill down. And here it takes me to, it was a trust in transaction. And it looks like it might have been for $20,000. Maybe this was a retainer that I received in. And it was received from Robert Snow, and it was assigned to file 6-001. So if you see a transaction on the conflict of interest report and you want more details, you can drill down on it with the drill down icon. And if we continue to scroll down, we'll see other hits that we found. Here it was an operating in, more than likely a payment, in the to from field again. Another operating in, another operating in. As I said, I use him quite a bit for training, so he does have a lot of payments received, probably a lot of trust transactions. Again, some more trust. Now over to the right, as I was scrolling, you may have seen some of these transactions have a blue piece of paper or an attachment icon. That means there's a PDF associated with this transaction. Now, this was an operating in, probably a payment. In my database, if I get a payment in, I generate a receipt. So this is more than likely the receipt that I generated. If you want to see the receipt, click on the attachment icon, and it will download the PDF copy of the attachment, and you can click on it to open it up. And in this case, we can see it actually was the receipt of payment. A little easier to see if I blow it up. So that's what that icon will be for, is if there's any kind of PDF attachment with the transaction, clicking this will let you download and view the attachment. And you just scroll through and perform your conflict search. Now, I did generate this to the screen. If I wanted to save a copy of the results to my document management software, then in the upper right, I have the ability to export out to an Excel spreadsheet, to a CSV file, or more than likely you want to generate it to a PDF copy. So click the PDF icon, and we will create a PDF copy of the conflict search that you can save. And here's the PDF copy. And now I can download it and save it to my document management software. Now, most of the time my reports will open in a new window. That's a setting in your browser. And in Soluno, there's a couple different settings you can play around with. So other times it may just download like it did that receipt. You may just have a downloaded file you have to click and open. Now the last option, PDF attachment, it's a little different. So those attachments, if I wanted to print those, I could go through this report and click on each one and download and print each attachment here. If I needed those, that's going to be very time consuming. So I have to scroll, find it, click, download. Scroll, download. What this icon does is it goes through the report, finds all the transactions that have the attachment, takes them all and combines them into one PDF for easy printing. So by clicking the PDF attachment button, it scans through this report, looks for these attachment icons, grabs them all, and then puts them into one giant PDF for easy access. So that's my receipt of payment. Receipt of payment. Receipt of payment. This is most of what these are, receipts. So that's why we have that fourth additional button. So if you do need copies of the attachments, you don't have to do them one at a time. You can do them all at once with the last export button. But that is how we perform a conflict search within Soluno. Now that we've done our conflict search and we're okay taking on Joshua Brown as a client, we now add him as a contact. And you will do that with the new contact tab. Now this new contact tab is where you'll add everybody in every organization you deal with. That includes your clients, your vendors, and even just your generic contacts. Like if you track who the judges are or opposing attorneys, expert witnesses, everybody will be added here under the new contact tab. So to create a new contact, we'll click on the new contact tab. And Soluno tries to make it as easy as possible to add a new contact. You're going to see there's a couple fields underlined in red. Whenever you see fields underlined in red, those are required fields. We need data in there before we'll allow you to save a record. You'll notice in the bottom left, the save button is currently grayed out because I have these two fields. Now, actually, we only need one of these two fields. We don't need both. So if I just start typing in Joshua's last name, you'll see I no longer need a company. And vice versa. If I'm entering a company instead of an individual, as soon as I start typing in a company name, I no longer need a last name. So we just need one of these two pieces of information. And at this point, you could go ahead and save a new contact. It's that easy to do. Now, it's possible your admins may require some additional fields like address or city. That depends on their admin settings. But the default settings in Soluno, we only require a last name or a company name to create a new contact. You will see this little section called Display As. This is just for if this is going to be a client that you're going to bill, how do we want to display the address on the bill? So if I just enter a name, that tells Soluno this is an individual and it will display as an individual. If I enter a company, then we know this is a company and we'll display it as a company on the bill address. If you have both, you can tell Soluno how you want this to print when you create a bill if this is a client. Do you want them to bill them as an individual, or do you want to bill them as a company? If you bill them as an individual, the invoice will go to Joshua Brown and then Joshua's address. If you bill them as a company, it'll go to Google, attention Joshua Brown, and then the address. So if you add a name to the company and they're a client that you're billing and you display them as a company, it'll go to the company name, and then under that it'll say attention, and then it'll have Joshua Brown or whatever name you have printed here, and then the address. We'll say Joshua is an individual. Now, you just fill in what other information you would like. Now, currently, I'm in a Canadian database. I know we have some US clients out there. Anytime there's a difference between the two, I will point it out. There's very few differences between the databases. There's a little misspelling, like Czech in Canada spelled a little differently than Czech in the US. But for the most part, they're almost exactly the same. But if anything does pop up that's different, I will let you know. Then you would just enter the address here. We will do this as Algonquin, I think. Now, this is one of the little differences. This would be, of course, it's a set for Canadian addresses. In the US, this would say state instead of province, and it'd be formatted for a US address. I am based out of the US, so I know US addresses, but since I usually train mainly Canadian clients, I like to keep using a Canadian database, and I just work that way. It's easier for me. Now, you will notice there's a couple icons here next to the address. What those icons are for is this a copy to clipboard. So if you wanted to copy this address to paste into a Word document or an email, instead of having to type the address out, you just click copy to clipboard. In the upper right, it'll say address copied. Then you just open up where you want to print that address, and I'll open up a copy of Word right quick. And then you can just right click and paste, and it copied his address in for me. So easy to get the address into other products if necessary without having to retype it. The little icon here is a map icon. So if you ever need to go to this address, maybe you're a family attorney and you're working as a GAL and you need to visit the kids in a surprise home visit, and you've never been to the address before, well, click this icon. It will take you out to your default mapping software so you can get directions to that address. Of course, we've got our phone numbers here. If you type in a phone number, once a phone number has been entered, the phone icon is available, so you can click that icon and just dial the phone number. Now, even though I'm on a PC right now, I use Zoom for phone calls, so I can actually open up my Zoom and call that number. And of course, you have an email address here. Then this will go ahead and generate, by clicking the icon, your default email will open, addressed to that particular person, and then you'll be able to send an email to that person as well. Description, if you want to put more information about the contact here, you can. And then the preferred correspondence method. If you're entering in a client, then you tell us how do you want to send them the bill with the preferred correspondence method. If you're going to mail them the bill, then you select print, and we will generate a PDF for that client when it's time to create their bill. If you prefer to email them directly out of Soluno a copy of their bill, then you can select email. If you want to do both, then you can do a printed copy and an email copy of the bill. If they are not a client and they're not receiving a bill, then you can just set this to none. Below that section, we have additional places to store contact data. Depending on your firm, you may or may not use any or all of these sections. The additional address section allows you to add additional addresses for this contact. This is their home address. Maybe you also have a work address that you want to add. Just click the add button and you can fill in their work address. You can store as many addresses as needed for a contact. Additional communication methods. Well, we've got places up here for 3 phone numbers and an email, but if you need even more phone numbers or email addresses, then you can add them here under additional communication methods. Just click add, and you will see you can add phone numbers, emails, fax number, a website, instant messaging, and you can set a billing email if you're going to use a separate email for billing purposes. So for an example, if I was setting their business website, I would just type in the website here under number email, and then tell Soluno this is a website, put a description of the website, and then click OK. It'll add it here. Now you'll see this new icon for the web. And if you click it, it'll take you to the website, in this case, google.com. Click it, and my browser just opens up a new window to Google. The pencil icon you'll see quite a bit in Soluno. That's your edit icon. So if that address changed, I can click on the edit pencil, type in the new address, click OK to save. Now when I click this, it'll take me to the new web address. The trash can is our delete button. If you no longer need to track this information, you can just click delete to delete the record. You can track referral information here. If this client was referred to you by one of your Soluno users, just click in the referral user box and select the user that referred them to you. If one of your existing contacts referred them to you, then click in the referred contact field, type in the person's name. Again, I'll use Mr. Snow since I use him quite a bit. Once you see their name pop up, click on it, and we'll link that contact as the referral contact. If they're referred some other way, then you can use the referral source box. Just click in it, and this is a free text field. Type in how they got referred to your firm. So for those of you who want to track your referrals, you can do that here at the contact level. Contact roles. Maybe Joshua is not an actual client. Maybe he's an expert witness that I'll be using on future cases. So I could list that role here so I know what he's used for, and then I could also run a report on all the expert witnesses I have in my database. To add a role, click on the Add button, and then choose the role from the drop-down. Now, as an FYI, by default, Soluno only comes pre-configured with one role, and that's the default service role. Your admins will need to add any additional roles you want to track. So all these others that you see in the list, I entered in those manually. So I added the expert role. I can select that role, click OK, and now he's listed as an expert, and I can run a report to show me all the experts I have in my database. Note section. Just add notes about this contact that you feel are relevant. Just click on Add and type in your note. You can type in as large a note as you want. You can enter multiple notes if you want. The key thing is, notes are searched during a conflict of interest. So anything that you want to note down that you feel might be useful for a future conflict search, you can add it here as a note. And when you run the conflict search, we will search the contents of all the notes in the database. And if we find it, it'll pull up as a hit. tags. Tags are used generally for two reasons. A, they're good for reporting. That way you can group contacts together by a tag and then run a report based on that tag to bring up that list of contacts. So maybe you're not using the contact roles feature, but you still want to be able to pull up a list of your expert witnesses. Well, you could just add a tag called expert. Now I can still run a report, and one of the options on my contact reports is to narrow the scope down by tag. I could choose the expert tag and get all my contacts that are tagged expert. So you can use the tag feature. I'll show you right quick. If I go to views and reports, run a contact report, I can run all contacts, and then there'll be a section contact tag, and I could just type in expert, run that report, and it will only pull up my contacts that I've tagged as expert. So that is how you can use tags for grouping records together for reporting purposes. And you've noticed, even though I have never saved this contact, even though I switched tabs, went to a whole nother section of the product, it remembered everything I've typed in so far. I haven't lost any data. It was stored in a cache file. So if you're entering a contact and your computer crashes or your browser crashes and you reopen it, chances are all of your data will still probably be there. It's a possibility you may lose a little bit, and the majority, if not all, the data should be there for you, so you don't have to retype it all in. So the other use of tags is setting up an ethical wall. You may want to block certain contacts from being seen by other users in the firm. So maybe I want to add a tag. This is for HR. I could then, as an admin, go into my security settings, and I could lock certain users from accessing any contacts that are tagged HR. That's a way to hide contacts from your users. So if you need to set up any kind of ethical wall, block people from seeing certain contacts, tags can be used to do that. Vendor info. So again, all records are entered as contacts. Individuals, clients, vendors, all added as contacts. So if this was an actual vendor that I wanted available for accounts payable, then under the vendor info, where it says is vendor, I would say vendor. Now when I save this record, this contact is available as a vendor, and I can add payables for this contact. The rest of this information is up to you. You can fill in as much or as little as you'd like. You can put in your account number for the vendor, a default general ledger account for any payables entered for this vendor, saving you the hassle of having to choose a GL account every time you use the vendor. You can set up a default activity code, useful if this vendor is going to have expenses that you want to expense back to a file. You can have a default activity code used to expense it back. You can enter your tax number, banking information, and even vendor arrangements. So maybe if I pay my payable within 10 days, I get a 3% discount. You can set up a vendor arrangement to allow you to automatically grant you the discount when you pay the payable. You would just add the vendor arrangement. Now again, Soluno does not ship with any vendor arrangements. Your admin would have to create them in the admin settings. But when they do, if you click add, you can then choose a vendor arrangement. So this 10% if paid within 20 days arrangement. If I click OK and add that, basically what will happen is I put a payable in. If I go to pay that payable, if I pay it within 20 days of receipt, we will automatically discount it 10%. And I only have to pay the amount of the bill minus 10%. So if you get any kind of early payment discount, it's a good idea to set up these vendor arrangements. You don't have to remember to give yourself the discount. As long as you pay within whatever the assigned date range is, we'll automatically put the discount on the payable and you will just pay whatever you owe minus the discount. Now, if you are a US client, I'm going to switch databases real quick to one of my US databases. There's going to be an additional section in the vendors just for the US clients. And that's the produce 1099 section. So of course in Canada, you don't have this. This is uniquely to the US. So if this is a vendor that you need to produce a 1099 for at the end of the year, you can tick this box to tell Soluno, I want a 1099. If you had any previous balances, you can enter those here. And then we just need to know which form are you printing on, the MISC form or the NEC form. So Soluno can print on the official 1099 forms from the IRS. You just need to get the forms, and then we can print the data onto the forms so you don't have to handwrite or type it in yourself when it's time to send out your 1099 forms. So that is a slight difference between the two products, US versus Canada. Billing file defaults. If this is going to be a client that you're going to bill, this is where we set up how we want to bill their files. Now these will fill in by default based on the admin settings again. So the billing group tells us how we're billing them. Are they an hourly case? Are they a flat fee case? And you would choose the appropriate bill group that you want to use for all files generated for this contact. Keeping in mind, these can always be overwritten on the file when it's generated. So when you create the new file, and if I've got this default billing group and I decide, well, no, this file's not going to be an hourly case, it's going to be a flat fee case, then when I create the file, I'll be able to choose a different bill group. For Canada, choose the appropriate tax group. And again, your admins will create the tax groups. In the US, we generally don't have tax, so for the most part, it'll be no taxes applied or exempt. I think there's 3 states that have an exception to that, but for the most part, we don't charge tax in the US. The rate group, for those hourly cases, how much is each timekeeper charging? And you can have multiple rate groups as necessary. And the file group are just specific ways you want to bill that particular type of file. So for example, if you do e-billing, we can set up a file group that forces task codes on all time and expense entries to make sure that your timekeepers put those task and activity codes on the entries so that they can be billed out properly and filed electronically without any issues. Preferred correspondence method. It's a duplicate from the top section here. So you can see if I change this to print and email, it'll set it down here to print and email. The reason it's duplicated is because once you save this record, if you want to make edits to it, you're going to go to the contact manager to make the edits. And this little section will be gone from the top of the record. To make changes to it, you'll scroll down here to the billing defaults to make the change. We just added this to the top to make sure a correspondence method was selected when the contact is saved, just to be sure in case you forget to go back and change that later. Use separate attachments for each invoice. This is only going to be available if you're using an email correspondence method. If you're using, for example, print, it'll be grayed out. Because all we're asking is, if I email the client their bill and they have multiple invoices, should each invoice have its own attachment? So you will only see that option available if you choose email or print an email. We can also make sure we don't reuse an invoice number more than once. If you have a default contact cover page that you want to print on their invoices, you can choose the layout here. Not everybody will use this function. Same for email. Do you have a default email cover you want to use? Additional contacts to notify. So if you want someone else to also get a copy of the bill, then you can add them here. First, make sure they've already been added as a contact. Then down at the bottom, you can look them up by name or number, select them, and add the contact. Now, when I bill this client, Joshua will get a copy of the bill, but so will Robert Snow. So if others need to get a copy of the bill, especially if you're billing a company, you can list them here. Just make sure they've already been added as contacts. If an additional client can make payments for this contact, so maybe Robert Snow not only gets a copy of the bill, but he can also send payments in, I can link Mr. Snow here. So anytime he sends a payment in, I can automatically pull up Joshua's invoices for payment as well. The last section, Other. What language do you want the invoice to print in? So this only controls the invoice, not the rest of the product. So we can, by default, we'll print the invoice in English, but we can also print the invoice in French. And the last button, Data Templates. We have just gone through all the fields available on a contact. There might be additional data you want to collect that we don't have a field for. So you can create those additional fields using data templates. Again, this is something your admin can create through the admin features. But if there's additional data you want to store on the contact, click on the Data Templates button and we'll bring up a list of the data templates your admins have created. So maybe I want to track pet insurance. I can turn that template on. Now, when I click OK, down here at the bottom, you're going to see the Save and Cancel buttons are going to change slightly. So when I click OK, that's telling me I'm adding more data. So the Save button goes away, and a Next button appears so I can get to my custom data fields. So I click Next, and you can add the extra data that is needed. Again, this is all custom data fields. Your admins can easily create these data fields as necessary. It's a very simple process. And that way you can store additional data that you want to track that we don't have a field for. And the other nice thing about this is, again, this data will be searched during a conflict search. So if you put some custom data in here and you put something that you want to make sure gets hit in a conflict search, these custom fields will be searched, and if we find a hit, we'll pop it up in the conflict search results. I'm going to turn off that data template because I don't need it. And now I've created my contact. All I have to do is click Save to add it to Soluno. Now, this screen you're currently seeing, not all of you will see this screen. The contact type. The way I have my Soluno configured is we have three types of contacts in Soluno: your clients, your vendors, and all your other contacts. I have this screen turned on, which allows me to have separate numbering sequences for my client versus vendors versus other. And this is all this is if you want to have a separate numbering system for the three types of contacts. So when I select client and click OK, there's my next client number, 126. If I select vendor, again, I have a different numbering system for vendors. So when I add a vendor, I click OK, And now my next vendor starts with a V. So that's how I can differentiate between my records. And if I select Other, all those contacts start with a letter O. So for those of you that see that screen, it's just set up so you can have 3 separate numbering systems. That's all it's for. It just determines the number of the contact you're about to create. It doesn't do anything else. If you don't see it, your firm's probably not using that feature, and it'll just auto number as necessary to the next contact. So now you've created the contact and they're a client. So now you want to create the file for that client. To create the file, new file tab. First, we need to link the contact to the file. So we add the client here. So I'm going to type Joshua's name, get Joshua pulled up, click on his name, tab out, and I'll link that contact to this file. The way my database is set up, it auto-generates a file number. I use the contact number, and then the first one is -001. Your file numbering system may be different than mine. There's, again, admin setup for that. We have the open date, and you can see you have some required fields. They're underlined in red, so until I fill them in, the Save button is grayed out. So I need to select the area of practice. The default task code for time entries will be billable work, but you can change that if necessary. Who is the responsible attorney on the case? And then the rate group pulled from Joshua's contact record. Now again, if I want to choose a different rate group, I can. I can override what's set up on the contact for the specific file. Now in my database, a description is required. That is not the default setting in Soluno. So you may not see the red underlined field under your description, but this would be the name of the file. At this point, since I filled in all the red fields, I can now save the new file. But of course, there's additional settings you may want to tweak. So we will go ahead and take a look at those particular settings. File staff. So whoever you select as the responsible attorney here will become the responsible, the assigned, and the lead attorney, and also the introducing attorney. If necessary, you can change any of these. Now the introducing percentage here, this is just for reporting purposes. It doesn't really do anything in the system. What you could do is this fee allocation portion. I have a senior partner, Allison. Allison might not do any work on a case, but because she helped start the firm, she always gets 5% of the fees for that case allocated to her. So I can set up a default fee allocation percentage that every time we bill this case out, Allison's going to get 5% of the fees allocated to herself, whether she works the case or not. Now, a lot of you may not use that feature, that's fine, but be aware that it does exist. So update the file staff if necessary. Billing settings. Again, file group, billing group, tax group, all populated from Joshua's contact record. So if I want to change any of these settings, I can. So if I want to use a different, if this is going to be electronic billing, for example, I could choose the electronic billing file group to force all my users to add the appropriate task and activity codes to time and expense entries. Billing group. Again, this is my default hourly group, but if I want to choose a different way to bill, I would select the appropriate group. In Canada, if you're billing and this is a different province that you're using this case in, choose the appropriate province taxes. File hold. By default, we're going to allow you, once you save this file, to add new entries to it. But you could put it on hold if needed and wait until maybe you've got to receive a retainer before you'll start work on the case. So you can put this case on hold so people can't enter time and expense until someone removes the hold from the file. On hold pending retainer threshold, that's basically the same concept, except I already have a billing group that has that set. So once I do the retainer threshold billing group, it automatically will select this. This is controlled by the billing group itself. So now it's basically, once I get my retainer from the client, I then can take it off hold and I can put in my time and expense. The billing group overrides, these are only available based on the billing group you select. The default billing group has no overrides to set because it's just an hourly case. Whatever time or expense you put in, that's what we're going to bill. There's nothing to override. But for example, if I have this maximum over life bill group, once I select that, I can then put here how much is the maximum amount to bill over the life of this file. And I can add that amount here. Then once I reach that, I cannot bill anything over that amount. So the bill group will control whether you can change any of the bill group overrides. Let's see, discount group, I can put in percentage discounts for fees. So these will all populate from the contact record, but again, you can override them when you create the file. Split advance billing. I don't cover split billing in this class. Split billing would be set here and also uses this tab, New Group Contact. For more information about split billing, feel free to go out to our website. There are some videos out there on how to set up and use split billing in Soluno. Not a lot of firms do it, so I don't include it in this class because it's basically a combination of data entry and billing at once. But I do have videos available on the website on how to do split billing and what this New Group Contact tab is for. But also under advanced billing, contacts to notify. We saw this on the contact form. If someone else should also get a copy of the bill for this file, you can add them here. Bear in mind, I added Snow here. If I've got Robert Snow added here at the contact level, and then I also add him here at the file level, then that means when this file is billed, he'll receive 2 copies of the bill, because Soluno will see him at the contact level, and then it'll also see him at the file level and assume he needs a copy for each level that he's assigned to. So what we recommend is, if you're going to CC people for bills, decide, do we CC them at the contact level or should we CC them at the file level? Because again, if they're in both places, they'll receive 2 copies of the invoice every time you bill the file. And finally, under the section, contact for billing address. By default, all bills will go to the linked client, in this case, Joshua Brown. What if on this particular file, instead of going to Joshua, it's going to go to someone else? Well, in that case, I can specify that someone else here. Make sure you've already added them as a contact, and then just look up their contact name here. Now, any bills created for this file, instead of being sent to Joshua, will be sent to Robert Snow, Frost Industries at this address. And this is the name and address that will appear on the invoice. So if you need a bill to go to someone else other than the assigned contact, you can set that here. Electronic billing. More and more of our users are having to use electronic billing. They're working for other firms that require them to upload their invoices directly to a third party software company. So, this is where you can set up the electronic billing on the file. We support the major templates, the Leads templates. So, we have the Leads 98B, the BI version 2, the 2000, the 2.0. We have some templates for specific vendors. We have one for open invoice, counseling, time metrics, ICBC, CMPA. Then we have a few additional Leads templates that you may need as well. So we do support electronic billing. We would just need to know what template you need. And when you select a template, there's usually some additional fields you might need to fill out in order for this file to be electronically billed properly and upload to your third-party biller. Just as an FYI, we do not recommend you do split billing and electronic billing due to the way bills are split and the way it rounds. It can mess with electronic bill. So if you have a file that's split bill and electronic, do it manually. Do not use the split bill feature. Otherwise, it'll cause issues when you're trying to upload your electronic billing. Just like at the contact level, we have referral information available here. You can do it by user, contact, or free text field. Same concept as at the contact level. Additional contacts. If you just want to track like who the judge is on this case, who the expert witness, who the co-counsel, opposing attorney are, if they're listed in the contact database, then you can link them here for quick reference. Again, make sure they're adding the contact, look up their name here, select their name, click add contact, and then here you'll see role is underlined in red. You need to choose the role they're playing on this case. And again, going back to what I talked to earlier for the contact level, these are roles that would need to be added by your admin. There are no roles other than default service role configured in the default setup of Soluno. So select the role that they're going to play, and then add any additional contacts you want to track. Again, everything we're looking at for the most part is optional. Is extra features that may help your law firm. Notes, same thing we saw at the contact level. Add whatever information you want about the file here. It will be searched during a conflict search. Tags, same thing. You can use tags to group files together for reporting purposes or add a tag to lock files with an ethical wall. So again, maybe your firm has multiple areas of practice. You've got a litigation side and a family law side, and you don't want the litigation side to see family law files and vice versa. So you could add tags to the litigation cases, maybe lit. Into the family law, you might add a tag FL. And then in security, you can set up, well, these people cannot see FL cases, and these others cannot see lit cases. Again, a way to block certain users from seeing certain files. The other section is just a place to store additional information, the court ID, the court jurisdiction, the judge, the physical file location, cross-reference to find that file. The trust administration fee button, you will only see this if you're in British Columbia. So British Columbia, Canada, you will have the ability to process the trust administration fee. Everybody else in Canada and in the US, you won't see that button. That's a British Columbia thing. Then finally, data templates. Again, we just went through all the fields available on a file, but you may have some custom data you want to store. So those data templates are created by your admin. Again, you just tick the one you need to add data to. Click OK to turn on those extra fields. Click Next and fill in the information as necessary. Turn that off because I don't need it. And finally, just save to create your new file. Now, how do you manage your existing contacts and files? Well, that is the Contact Manager and the File Manager tabs. To manage an existing contact, click on the Contact Manager. In this section, look up the contact that you want information on. I can type in Joshua's name, for example. Click on the name when I see it. Click play to load their data. Now here under the General tab, I can go ahead and I can make any adjustments to their address or update any of these sections as necessary. In the Other tab, there's a new button now. So he's he's contact number 125. Maybe I decide, oh, that's not the number I needed. I need to change that number. Well, under the Other section, if I expand that out, I can change the contact number. Just click the button and type in the number you want to use. You cannot use an existing contact number. So if I typed in like 12, oh, maybe I don't have a 12. Usually I do. Usually in numerical order. I've got a 10. So it'll be underlined in red saying, no, 10 is already in use. You can't use it. So as long as it's not underlined in red, that number is available. So I can assign number 12 to him. Click OK, and that will create the new number. And now his contact number is 12. And I don't want to do that for him, so I'm going to change him back to 125 so I keep my numbering system. Now, I'm going to switch this to a contact that I've used so you can see some data. The Ledger tab. You can run reports on this client and all their associated files. Click the down arrow and choose the report you want to run. In this case, probably most people use the client ledger report, but you can see there's a number to choose from. Click play to run the report. Now I can see everything I've done on this client and all their associated files. So for file 6-001 for this client, here's everything I've done. Time in, time out, accounts payable that I billed from a payable, invoices that I've created for them. From this client ledger, if I needed a copy of this invoice, number invoice 1270, over to the right, the attachment icon. Click it, and I can get a copy of the invoice. And there it is. I see all the fees. If they've been billed out, I can see the invoice number that they're on. I see trust transfers. Everything I've worked on for every file for this client will show up here under the ledger. The Communications tab. These are all the bills I've created for this client for all their different files. So if you want to reprint a bill, you can also reprint it from here. Just click on the PDF icon to download the bill. And here's one of the bills for this, and it was for file 6-001. So the Communications tab will have copies of all the PDF invoices that you've created. If you do electronic billing, let me scroll down a little bit further in here. Those are the emailed electronic invoice. Click it and you can see a copy of electronic invoice as well. If they're a vendor, you'll still have the General tab, the Communications tab to see any checks you've printed for that vendor, and then you'll have a Vendor tab for vendor reports. We have a vendor ledger and a vendor ledger including operating and trust entries. So you can run a vendor ledger directly from the vendor from the Contact Manager. File Manager, same idea. It's So we can go to Edit Existing Files, load the file. Again, I'll load one that I use quite a bit. Click play to load it. Under the General tab, we can see the different pieces we can edit. We can see balances on this file. So here's what I've got unbilled, what I've got billed, and the total. If you're using trust, you can see the amounts they have in their trust accounts. He's got two separate trust accounts. Trust account 1, and I've got money in trust account 30, and the balance in each trust account. If for some reason you don't trust those numbers, you think they're wrong, then you can click the validate button to recalculate the trust numbers. I've never had to use this validate button. Those numbers have never been wrong. But if you are unsure, you can just click validate and we'll quickly check to make sure those numbers are correct. And then we can edit any of the existing data just like we saw on the file level when we created this file. And again, if we go to the other section, we have two new buttons. If I don't like the file number, I can change the file number. Keeping in mind, I cannot use a file number already in existence. So you'll see that's in existence. I can't use it. Or sometimes you link the file to the wrong contact. You need to link it to the correct contact. So you can change the primary contact here. So just click Change Primary Contact and then look up the contact this file actually belongs to. And you can relink it to the correct contact. And then you've got the Ledger tab to run reports on this file directly from the file manager. Default report is generally the client ledger. So here's all the transactions for this file. If I scroll all the way to the bottom to the latest transactions, as long as it hasn't been billed, I can go ahead and delete items from here. As we can see, some of these are on a requested bill right now. So if the bill's been requested, just not finalized, I can't edit them. Like this here, this payment that I received, if I need to edit or delete the payment, I can delete that payment or click on the edit button to edit the payment. Also from the file manager is the ability to close files. Now, we will only allow you to close files under certain conditions. So this file I can't close because it's active. And if I try to close it by clicking the button, so basically what you do is load the file you want to close, and then click the close file button. If we can't close it, these are the different reasons on why we can't close a file. At this point, you would have to track down, okay, well, why can't I close the file based on the reasons listed here? In a future release of Soluno, we will tell you the exact reason why you can't close the file. But for the moment, at the time of this recording, it's just these are the reasons it could be that you can't close the file. Now, again, this one's active. I knew I couldn't close it. If I choose a file that I can close, load that file. If you can close the file, this screen will pop up. Close file number. Again, this is an admin setting. I just use the original file number when I close it. You'll choose today's date as the close date, but you can change that if you need to. You can type in where is this physical file located, and then when should I be able to destroy the physical file. We do not delete files in Soluno. There is no delete option to delete a file in the product. If you accidentally create a file that you don't need, you can't delete it. What you can do is just next time you open a file, use that existing file and just edit the data into a new file and link it to the appropriate client to get rid of that file in Soluno. The print option will print the client ledger for this file that you're closing, and that is recommended that you click the print button. You will then print the client ledger. You will then take that client ledger, store it with the physical file, so you have all that data together when the file is closed. I will not print it now to save time. Then once you close the file, it'll tell you, it just removes it from searches and reports. Any transactions on the file will still be represented in your reports, but when you try to search for this file in your reports, it will not come up normally. And just click OK to close the file. And file has been closed. Now if I try to find file 6-008, it doesn't find it because it's a closed file. Closed files are searched during a conflict of interest. So if it is closed, you do a conflict of interest, we still search your closed files and we will populate them if we find a hit in a closed file in your conflict search. If you need to reopen a file, just again go to the file manager. You can load any file you want, it doesn't matter. Just come down to the bottom right and click reopen a file. Type in the file you want to reopen, either by name or number. There's that Frost Industries that I just closed. What you'll notice is when we close a file, we add an *1 after the file number. That's how we designate closed files in the database. As a consequence, you cannot use the asterisk in a file number. When you create a new file, you cannot use the asterisk symbol. So I just load that 6008 that I've closed. After I load it, I just go down here to reopen. Click it. File's reopened. And now I've got 6008 back in my back in my software. If you like, you can also close contacts. Again, there'll be certain conditions to close a contact. If I try to close this one, it's a vendor I use quite a bit. So when I click on close contact here in the bottom right, it will say it can't be closed. And again, we'll give you the reasons why it cannot be closed. So you just have to figure out which reason does this one apply to. Again, in a future release of Soluno, you will actually pop up exactly why we can't close it. But at the time of this recording, we just give you the list of why it can't be closed, and you will narrow it down to figure out why it's not able to be closed. But if I pull up one that I can close, when I click close contact, are you sure? Yes. Contact has been closed. Removed from the general drop-down. So now I can't find that particular one here in the drop-down list. It doesn't exist in the active contacts. To reopen a contact, same idea. Go to the contact manager, click on reopen a contact. Doesn't matter if you've got anything loaded, just click that button, type in the contact you want to reopen, click play to load them, and then reopen. This is totally optional. I know a lot of firms that don't ever close contacts. I generally don't close contacts. That's why we didn't see any extras in my database. But I do recommend the close file when the file has reached the end of its life to make it easier to search your existing files. But again, that would be totally up to you and your law firm's decision and when you should close a file and when you should close a contact. And then when you go to run reports on contacts and files, so views and reports, contacts. So I could go into all files and just look for my closed files to see a closed files list. Click play. And I have 2 closed files. So you do have access to run reports to find closed contacts and/or closed files. But that is our contacts and files class. If you ever need additional information, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach us here at training@soluno.legal. Also, don't forget to visit our website at www.soluno.legal. Click on resources and go to the training hub. If you do that, resources, training hub. This is where you can register for live trainings that we have. The pre-recorded trainings like this video will be listed here. Our quick tutorials, little mini videos. This is where you can go to learn about split billing. Go to quick tutorials, contacts and files, and you'll see how to create a split bill file, review a split file ledger. If you go to billing, bill a split file, and we'll add additional videos over time here as well, and also some downloadable documents. Just click on the topic you want to see, and we will have documents you can download. I hope you found this class helpful. Again, if you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at training@soluno.legal, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.